She sat on the small wooden stool in the corner of the room, her fingers hovering over the keys of the old piano that had been in her family for years. The keys were a little worn, and a few of them stuck now and then, but it didn't matter to her. She loved the piano more than anything else, more than the noise of the busy street outside or the cluttered kitchen filled with the smell of cooking. Every time she played, the world outside disappeared, leaving only the music and her heart. Her parents often peeked in while she played. They would smile and nod, encouraging her quietly, but they could never quite understand how she could spend hours just pressing keys and repeating the same melody over and over. She didn't mind. She knew that no one could see what she felt when her fingers moved across the piano. She didn't play for attention. She played because she had to. It was a part of her. Despite her talent, she was quiet and shy. At school, she sat in the back, trying not to be noticed. She watched other kids laugh, play, and talk easily, and sometimes she wished she could be like them. She wanted to share her music, but the thought of performing in front of people made her stomach twist. She imagined them laughing or looking bored, and it made her want to hide. Every time there was an announcement for a school performance or a local event, she would shake her head and pretend she hadn't heard. But deep down, a small voice inside her wondered what it would feel like to be brave. One afternoon, as the sun spilled golden light across her small room, she heard about a local talent show that would take place in the community hall. Posters were everywhere, announcing the event and inviting children to participate. She tried to ignore it, but the thought lingered in her mind. This was her chance, she thought. But the fear returned quickly. What if people laughed? What if they didn't like her music? She could almost hear the crowd snickering even before she played a single note. Her parents noticed her staring at the poster for hours. They didn't push her, but they encouraged her gently. "You have something special," her mother said, touching her shoulder. "You should share it with the world." But sharing meant stepping into a place full of strangers, and that terrified her. She practiced even harder in the days leading up to the event. She sat at the piano for hours, learning every note by heart, repeating the song again and again until her fingers hurt. Each time she played, she imagined herself on that stage, seeing faces in the dark, hearing the murmurs of the crowd. She practiced pushing away the fear, telling herself she could do it, even if her voice inside whispered that she couldn't. Her little brother often peeked into the room, fascinated by the music. He would sometimes tap along on the floor, or hum quietly, and she would smile at him. He believed in her in a way no one else did, and that small belief helped her more than she realized. "You're amazing," he said one day, bouncing on his toes. "Everyone will love it." On the night before the talent show, she barely slept. Her heart raced with both excitement and fear. She laid out her outfit carefully, the same one she had picked out months ago for a special occasion. She practiced the song one last time, each note flowing smoothly, her fingers remembering the rhythm even when her mind wavered. She stared at the ceiling, imagining herself standing on that stage, imagining the crowd's faces, the lights shining down, the sound of applause. She wished for courage, and for a moment, she thought she might not find it. The next morning, the streets were busy with people heading to the event. She clutched her music folder tightly, feeling its weight in her hands like a lifeline. Every step toward the hall made her stomach twist with nerves. Her parents walked beside her, offering quiet encouragement, their hands brushing against hers. She nodded but didn't speak. Her mind was filled with the same questions. What if they laugh? What if I make a mistake? Inside the hall, the noise of the crowd was loud, filled with laughter, conversations, and the occasional clatter of chairs. She could see other children performing, their smiles wide, their confidence bright. Some played instruments, some sang songs she had never heard before, but all of them looked so comfortable. She felt small and unsteady in comparison. But then she remembered her hours at the piano, the way her fingers had learned every note, the way her music could carry the feelings she couldn't put into words. She took a deep breath and stepped backstage, her hands shaking slightly. The announcer called her name and suddenly it was time. The lights felt too bright, the crowd too large, but but she stepped forward anyway. The noise faded as she sat down at the piano. She adjusted the bench, took another deep breath, and placed her fingers on the keys. The first note was shaky, but then she found the rhythm, the melody filling the room like a gentle wave. The music carried her, and she forgot the crowd, forgot the laughter she feared, and lost herself in the sound. Backstage, she could hear whispers. Some people were surprised. Some were laughing quietly, thinking she was too young to play well. But she didn't stop. She remembered every practice session, every hour spent perfecting the song. She let the music flow, each note stronger, clearer, more confident than the last. Her body relaxed, her heart slowed, and she felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. She was showing them who she truly was, even if they didn't know it yet. As the song continued, she noticed a change in the crowd. The laughter softened, replaced by curiosity. Some heads tilted, eyes widened. She didn't glance up at them, but she felt it, felt the energy shift. She smiled slightly to herself, knowing that maybe, just maybe, they were beginning to hear what she felt. The music was no longer just for her. It was for everyone, carrying her emotions, her story, her courage across the room. The last note lingered, a quiet echo in the hall. She held it, letting the sound fade naturally. Then, slowly, the applause began. At first, it was scattered, hesitant, but it grew louder, stronger, filling the hall with claps and cheers. Her heart soared, relief washing over her. She had done it. She had faced her fear. She had shared her music. She looked out at the crowd, seeing surprised faces, people smiling, some even leaning forward in admiration. Backstage, her parents hugged her tightly, their eyes shining with pride. Her little brother jumped around, laughing and clapping, saying, "I knew you could do it." She laughed too, a soft, happy sound, feeling warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she realized that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was moving forward in spite of it. That night, as she lay in bed, her fingers still tingling from the piano keys, she thought about the crowd, about the laughter that had turned into applause. She realized that the world might not always understand her, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that she understood herself, her passion, and her talent. And maybe, just maybe, the world would understand too if she gave it the chance. She closed her eyes, a small smile on her lips, dreaming of the next time she would play, the next stage she would step onto. Fear might still come, but she knew now that it could be faced, one note at a time. And with that thought, she drifted into sleep, her dreams filled with music, courage, and the soft, steady rhythm of a heart that believed in itself. As she stepped onto the stage, her heart was pounding like a drum. The bright lights blinded her for a moment, and the murmurs of the crowd filled her ears. She could feel their eyes on her, and the weight of their attention pressed down like a heavy blanket. She clutched the edge of the piano, her fingers trembling slightly. This was it. There was no turning back now. The first few moments were the hardest. She lifted her hands over the keys, hesitated, and then pressed down. The sound filled the hall, soft and uncertain at first. A few people in the audience laughed, some whispered to each other, and the giggles seemed to spread across the room. Her stomach twisted, and a wave of panic rose inside her. She froze for a second, almost wanting to run off the stage. But then she remembered all the hours she had spent practicing, the evenings spent perfecting every note. She took a deep breath, letting it steady her, and continued. The laughter continued, louder now, but she forced herself to focus on the music. She reminded herself that this was her moment, that the piano was her safe place, and that her fingers knew the song even if her heart was shaking. She began to play with a little more confidence, the notes coming out smoother, more assured. Still, she could feel the crowd's eyes, and it was hard not to notice the doubtful expressions and smirks. She thought about leaving, giving up, and avoiding the embarrassment. But then she saw a little boy in the front row. He looked at her with wide eyes, not laughing or whispering, just staring. His expression was full of curiosity and wonder. Something inside her shifted at that moment. If even one person could see the beauty in what she was doing, then maybe she could keep going. She focused on the music, letting it flow through her like a river. Her hands began to move more freely, the melody carrying emotion and depth beyond her years. Some of the laughter faded as people began to notice the music. A few faces softened, others leaned forward, drawn in by the surprising skill coming from such a young girl. She didn't look at them, afraid that the pressure would make her falter, but she could sense the change. The hall was no longer just a room filled with people. It had become a place where her music could reach out and touch hearts. Each note she played was a small act of courage, a statement that she was more than the doubts and whispers around her. A man sitting near the back frowned at first, shaking his head as if to dismiss her. But as the song progressed, he stopped talking, and his frown slowly turned into a look of concentration. Her music was pulling him in, making him listen, making him feel. The room seemed to hold its breath, and the initial laughter became a quiet murmur of surprise and attention. She felt a small spark of hope flicker inside her, mixed with the fear that it might not last. The song demanded more from her now. Her fingers moved faster, more confidently, hitting each note with precision. She felt the music in her chest, in her arms, in every part of her body. The fear hadn't disappeared completely, but it had changed. It was no longer a wall that held her back. It was a fuel that pushed her forward. She played with all the emotion she had kept hidden for so long, letting the story of her practice, her struggle, and her dreams come alive in the sound. Then came the turning point. A high note, one she had been unsure about during practice, approached. Her fingers hesitated for a fraction of a second, but she trusted them. She pressed the key, and the sound rang out perfectly. She saw a few people in the audience catch their breath, surprised at the skill she displayed. The laughter had disappeared entirely. Now there was only attention, only anticipation. Every person in the hall was listening, waiting for what would come next. She could feel her confidence growing. The rhythm of the song became stronger, her movements more fluid. She played as if she and the piano were one, and for the first time, she didn't feel small or nervous. She was in control, commanding the room with each note. The audience began to murmur, not with doubt or ridicule, but with appreciation. Heads turned, eyes widened, and even the skeptical faces could not hide their amazement. The energy in the room shifted from laughter to quiet admiration, and she felt it. She felt the power of her music reaching them. A young girl sitting near the front had tears in her eyes. She whispered to her mother, pointing at the performer and saying how incredible it was. An older man clapped softly, nodding his head, clearly impressed. The little boy who had first given her courage smiled widely, clapping along to the music. Seeing these reactions, her heart swelled with a mix of relief and pride. She had faced the crowd, had faced the fear, and had managed to reach them even just a little. She didn't rush. She let the music breathe, letting each note resonate fully before moving on. The audience leaned in, captivated by the control and emotion in her performance. Some who had laughed at first now had their mouths slightly open in surprise. Some whispered to the people next to them, pointing and nodding in recognition of her talent. She couldn't see them all, but she could feel the room's attention, could feel the shift from doubt to fascination. Her fingers flew over the keys, faster now, dancing with precision and grace. She had prepared for this moment, but nothing could have truly prepared her for the thrill of feeling the music connect with an audience. She felt alive in a way she had never known, and with each chord, she pushed herself further, letting the emotions she had kept inside spill out into the room. Every fear, every hesitation, every late-night practice session poured into the performance. Some people began to smile broadly, nodding their heads in time with the music. Others whispered excitedly, sharing their surprise with the neighbors. A few faces reflected awe, the kind that comes from witnessing raw talent and courage. The room that had once been a place of laughter and doubt had transformed into a space of admiration. The music had done its work. It had broken through the walls of judgment and reached the hearts of those listening. Her own heart raced with exhilaration. She had done what she had feared, and it had worked. The laughter, the doubt, the fear that had gripped her so tightly at the start of the performance were gone, replaced by a quiet strength and confidence. She realized that the moment wasn't just about proving others wrong. It was about proving to herself that she could rise above fear, that her talent and dedication could shine even when the world seemed skeptical. By the end of the song, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Her final notes echoed through the hall, soft yet powerful, and she held them, letting the sound linger. She could feel the eyes of the audience upon her, their attention complete. And then, slowly, the first claps began. Hesitant at first, scattered here and there, but growing steadily. One clap turned into several into a chorus of appreciation. The sound was overwhelming, joyful, and completely different from the laughter she had feared. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized what she had accomplished. She had faced her fear, played with courage, and touched the hearts of those who had doubted her. The applause grew louder, more confident, more enthusiastic. People were rising to their feet, cheering and clapping, showing their respect for the courage and talent that had overcome their initial doubts. She sat there for a moment, letting the applause wash over her, feeling an incredible mix of relief, pride, and happiness. Backstage, she felt the rush of adrenaline begin to fade. Her parents rushed to her side, hugging her tightly, their eyes sparkling with pride. Her little brother jumped up and down, shouting her name and clapping with excitement. She smiled through tears, realizing that she had not only faced the crowd, but had transformed their laughter into admiration. She had discovered something important, that courage and talent, when combined, could change perceptions and touch lives. That night, as she lay in bed, her fingers still tingling from the piano keys, she reflected on the experience. She thought about the initial laughter, the whispers, the doubt, and the fear that had almost held her back. She realized that those moments of uncertainty had made the triumph even sweeter. She had learned that fear is not an enemy, but a companion that can be turned into strength if met with determination. She drifted into sleep with a quiet smile, dreaming of music, courage, and the power of belief in oneself. The crowd had laughed at first, yes, but in the end, she had shown them the truth of her talent. She had faced the fear, embraced the challenge, and played like a true prodigy. And for the first time, she knew that this was only the beginning. The moment she realized she had captured the crowd's attention, a wave of calm washed over her. The initial fear and hesitation that had gripped her at the start of the performance were now replaced with a quiet determination. Each note she played was precise, full of emotion, and carried the depth of her countless hours of practice. She no longer thought about the laughter that had greeted her earlier. Instead, she thought only about the music and the story it could tell. She noticed subtle changes in the audience. People who had been distracted moments before were now leaning forward, eyes wide, their faces reflecting surprise and admiration. Some whispered to the person next to them, their voices low but filled with excitement. She felt the energy shift in the hall, a current of appreciation flowing toward her. It was as though her music was building invisible bridges, connecting her heart to theirs, and she felt a surge of courage that strengthened her every movement. The high notes came easier now, and she added gentle flourishes, touches she had always hesitated to include in practice for fear of making mistakes. Her fingers danced across the keys, and the melody expanded, rich and full, filling every corner of the hall. She could feel the music taking on a life of its own, almost as if it was guiding her hands, encouraging her to push further and reach higher. She played with a confidence she hadn't realized she possessed, allowing the notes to flow naturally and powerfully. A woman sitting near the back of the hall had tears in her eyes, and a few people nearby wiped their own eyes quietly. The music had touched them, stirring emotions they hadn't expected to feel. She didn't look at them directly, but she felt it. The connection, the understanding that her performance was more than just sound. It was an expression of her soul. The realization brought a smile to her face, even as she continued to pour every ounce of herself into the performance. Her hands moved faster, yet more gracefully, as she approached the climax of the piece. The notes seemed to soar, rising and falling like waves on the ocean. Each chord resonated with clarity, and the melody became increasingly intricate, demanding precision, strength, and passion. She was no longer a nervous child playing in front of a doubtful crowd. She was an artist, fully immersed in her craft, shaping every note with intention and heart. The hall was silent now, except for the music, and the attention was unwavering. She could see individual reactions around her. A young boy who had been fidgeting at the beginning was now sitting perfectly still, eyes wide, completely captivated. An older man, initially skeptical, now had a gentle smile, his head slightly tilted, absorbing the emotion of each note. The little girl in the front row who had been whispering to her mother now had both hands clasped, eyes glistening with amazement. Each small gesture reinforced her confidence, and she allowed herself to be carried by the moment. Midway through the piece, a particularly challenging sequence approached. She had been worried about it during her practice sessions, fearing a stumble or an incorrect note that could ruin the flow. But now, in the heat of the performance, her fingers knew exactly what to do. She navigated the keys with precision, each note crisp and resonant. The difficult passage was no longer intimidating. It was a part of her expression, a testament to the dedication she had poured into mastering it. As she played, she could almost hear the collective intake of breath from the audience, the silent acknowledgement of her skill. With each measure, she became more aware of the story she was telling. This was not just about impressing the crowd or proving her talent. It was about expressing the struggles, hopes, and dreams she had carried alone for so long. Every note reflected a piece of her journey, from the quiet hours of practice in her small room to the trembling first steps onto the stage. The music was a language she had perfected, one that spoke to hearts in a way words never could. She added a subtle change in tempo, a delicate pause that gave the audience a moment to breathe and absorb the emotion. The effect was immediate. Heads turned, eyes widened, and even those who had been distracted were now fully engaged. She realized that she had control not just over the music but over the entire atmosphere in the hall. Her confidence soared, and with it, her performance grew even more expressive and captivating. As the climax approached, she felt her heart beating in time with the rhythm. The music swelled, a cascade of sound that seemed to lift the room into another space entirely. She played each note with intention, allowing the emotion to pour freely, unrestrained. The hall was alive with the music, and she felt an exhilarating connection with every listener. She could sense their admiration, their surprise, their awe. Her performance had become a shared experience, a moment that belonged to everyone in the room. Her hands moved with lightning speed and effortless grace, hitting each note with clarity and precision. She was fully in the zone, a state of complete immersion where fear and doubt had no place. The melody soared, dipped, and danced across the keys, carrying the audience with it. She could feel the collective energy, a wave of appreciation that flowed through the room and returned to her, strengthening her resolve and fueling her passion. The music had taken on a life of its own, and she was its vessel. The once skeptical and laughing faces were now filled with astonishment. Conversations had ceased, and the only sound in the hall was the music. She had transformed the energy of the room completely, from doubt to awe. The people who had chuckled at her in the beginning were now watching in complete silence, captivated by the brilliance of her performance. It was a powerful and humbling moment, a realization that her music could touch hearts and change perceptions. A small girl in the front row leaned toward her mother, whispering how incredible it was. An older man nodded slowly, a smile of quiet appreciation on his face. Even those seated farther back were leaning forward, their attention fully captured. She felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment and joy, knowing that her music had reached them. The hours of practice, the fear, the doubt, all of it had led to this moment, and it was more beautiful than she had ever imagined. The song began to wind down, the melody becoming softer and more delicate. She played with care, savoring each note, letting it resonate and linger in the air. The crowd remained silent, absorbed in the final moments, and she allowed herself to enjoy the feeling of complete control and connection. The performance was no longer just about her. It had become a shared journey, a story that everyone in the hall experienced together. As she reached the final chord, she held it, letting it fade slowly into silence. The room remained quiet for a heartbeat, as if the audience needed a moment to process what they had just witnessed. Then, gradually, the first claps began, soft and tentative. One hand, then another, until the sound grew, spreading across the hall like a ripple. She smiled softly, her heart swelling with pride and relief. She had faced the fear, played with all her heart, and captured the crowd's admiration. The applause grew louder, stronger, and more confident. People began to rise to their feet, cheering, clapping, and shouting words of encouragement. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment, a warmth that filled her chest and made her smile through tears. The little boy in the front row clapped enthusiastically, his eyes sparkling with joy. She realized that the journey had been worth every moment of fear and doubt. Backstage, her parents rushed to her side, enveloping her in hugs and praise. Her little brother bounced up and down, laughing and shouting her name. She felt an incredible mix of exhaustion and exhilaration, a sense of fulfillment that she had never known before. She had transformed the room with her music, faced the crowd, and discovered the strength within herself. That night, as she lay in bed, her fingers still tingling from the piano keys, she thought about what had happened. The fear, the doubt, the initial laughter. They had all been a part of the journey. She realized that true courage wasn't the absence of fear but the decision to act despite it. She had faced her fears, expressed her talent, and touched the hearts of those who had once doubted her. It was a lesson she would carry forever. She closed her eyes, dreaming of music, courage, and the endless possibilities that awaited her. The turning point of her performance had not only won the admiration of the crowd, but had also revealed the depth of her own strength. She had played like a true prodigy, and for the first time, she knew that her journey was only beginning. The final notes of her song echoed through the hall, lingering like a gentle whisper, and she felt the music settle into the air around her. Her hands rested lightly on the keys, trembling slightly from the effort and emotion of the performance. The silence that followed was almost overwhelming, a pause that held the audience in anticipation, as if everyone wanted to savor the final moments before reality returned. She could feel their eyes on her, and a mix of nervousness and exhilaration ran through her. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment where everything could change. Then it happened. The first applause started quietly, almost uncertain, as if the audience was checking to see if it was okay to express their admiration. She looked up and saw a few faces smiling, nodding in encouragement. A rush of warmth spread through her chest. One clap turned into two, and soon the applause was rolling through the hall like waves of sound. Her heart raced, and a tear slipped down her cheek. She had faced the crowd, had overcome the laughter and doubt, and now she was being recognized for her talent. It was more than she had ever dreamed. The applause grew louder and stronger, and she realized that the entire hall was cheering. People stood up, clapping and shouting words of praise. Some were laughing with joy, others whistling in amazement, and a few had tears in their eyes. She could see the expressions of shock, wonder, and pride on the faces of strangers who had doubted her moments ago. It was a moment of triumph she would never forget. Her fingers, still lightly resting on the keys, tingled with the memory of every note played, every emotion poured into the song. She stood slowly, bowing her head slightly in gratitude. The crowd's energy lifted her, making her feel lighter and stronger all at once. Her parents rushed forward, their faces radiant with pride, hugging her tightly. Her little brother jumped up and down, clapping his hands and laughing with pure joy. She laughed too, a soft, happy sound that came from deep within her. It was relief, joy, and pride all wrapped into one. She had not only played with skill but had moved hearts, and it was a feeling unlike any other. As she stepped away from the piano, the audience continued to cheer. She looked around the hall, noticing people she hadn't seen before. Neighbors, teachers, friends, and strangers. all smiling, clapping, and showing their respect. Some were whispering to each other, repeating how amazed they were. It was a moment of connection, where her music had broken the barrier between performer and audience. She realized that the laughter she had feared at the beginning had disappeared entirely, replaced by admiration and joy. The room was filled with warmth, and she could feel it enveloping her like a gentle hug. A few young children approached, eyes wide and sparkling, asking her questions about the piano and how she had learned to play. She smiled and answered softly, feeling a sense of pride in her abilities and in the inspiration she could provide. She noticed one little boy who had been quiet and shy, sitting in the back. He now looked amazed, clapping enthusiastically, and she felt a connection with him, knowing that her courage had shown him something important, that fear could be faced and talent could shine, no matter how young you were. The judges, who had been observing silently, stood up, applauding along with the crowd. One of them approached, offering words of praise that made her heart swell. They commented on her technical skill, the emotion in her playing, and the courage she had displayed. It was validation she hadn't known she needed, and it strengthened her belief in herself. She realized that the performance was not just about showing skill but about sharing a part of herself with the world, and that sharing had been met with understanding and appreciation. Her mind drifted back to the first moments on stage, the fear, the laughter, and the doubt. She remembered how her hands had trembled and how she had almost stopped. But now, seeing the response, she understood that those moments had been necessary. The fear had pushed her to play with focus and determination. The initial doubt had given her a story to overcome. And the applause, the cheers, the smiles, they were the reward for her courage. It was a powerful lesson, one she would carry with her forever. She walked to the side of the stage, her heart still racing but her confidence soaring. She took a deep breath and looked back at the audience, their faces now full of admiration. It was a surreal moment, one she had imagined countless times in her dreams, but never thought she would experience in reality. The applause began to fade slowly, replaced by soft murmurs of awe and conversation. She felt a sense of completion, of fulfillment, and of possibility. She had faced the crowd and had triumphed. As the event continued, other performers took the stage, but she noticed that the atmosphere had changed. People were more attentive, more encouraging, and more respectful. Her performance had set a tone, had raised the energy of the entire room. She realized that courage and talent could inspire others, that her willingness to face fear had a ripple effect. It was not just about her success. It was about the way her bravery could influence and motivate others. Later, as she stepped backstage, her parents enveloped her in a long embrace. They whispered words of pride and encouragement, and she felt a sense of love and security she had never felt so strongly before. Her little brother clung to her, jumping and laughing, his joy contagious. She laughed too, feeling lighter, freer, and more alive than ever. The experience had changed her. She had learned that facing fear could lead to triumph, and that the effort and dedication she had poured into her craft were worth every moment of struggle. The applause and admiration lingered in her mind as she left the hall, walking home under the soft glow of the evening sun. People she passed on the street recognized her, offering smiles and words of praise. She nodded and smiled back, feeling a quiet pride and happiness. The day had been a turning point, a moment where she had proven to herself and the world that courage, dedication, and talent could overcome doubt and fear. It was a memory she would carry forever. That night, as she lay in bed, she reflected on everything that had happened. The fear, the trembling, the doubts. They were all part of the journey. The applause, the admiration, and the joy were the reward. She realized that every moment of struggle had prepared her for this triumph. She felt a sense of gratitude for her own perseverance and for the people who had supported her along the way. It was a lesson in courage, in determination, and in the power of believing in oneself. Her thoughts drifted to the future, to the many stages and audiences that might lie ahead. She knew there would be new challenges, new fears, and new obstacles. But she also knew that she had faced her greatest fear and had triumphed. She had discovered the strength within herself, the courage to perform, and the power to move others with her talent. And with that knowledge, she felt ready for whatever came next. She closed her eyes, a smile playing on her lips, and drifted into sleep. The memories of the applause, the faces of admiration, and the feeling of triumph stayed with her. She dreamed of music, of courage, and of all the possibilities that awaited. The crowd had laughed at first, yes, but in the end, she had shown them the truth of her talent. She had played like a true prodigy, and the experience had changed her forever. The next morning, she woke up with a sense of quiet satisfaction still lingering from the previous day. The memory of the applause, the faces of admiration, and the feeling of triumph played over in her mind like a gentle melody. She stretched, her fingers still tingling slightly from the piano, and smiled. Yesterday had been more than a performance. It had been a revelation, a moment that had changed her view of herself and the world around her. Breakfast was filled with chatter and smiles. Her parents were beaming, recounting the reactions of the crowd, the people who had praised her, and the way she had captivated the audience. Her little brother could hardly sit still, bouncing with excitement and asking endless questions about the performance. She laughed softly at his energy, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Their joy was contagious, and she felt the bond of family stronger than ever. She realized that their belief in her had been one of the key pillars that had helped her face her fears and shine. As she prepared for school, she noticed that the world outside seemed a little different. People greeted her with smiles, neighbors waved, and a few even whispered words of congratulations as she passed by. The feeling was surreal but comforting. She had stepped into the world in a small but meaningful way, and it responded with kindness and recognition. She realized that while the stage had been temporary, the impact of her courage and talent could ripple outward in ways she hadn't expected. At school, news of her performance had already spread. Friends and classmates approached her, some with shy smiles, others with excitement and curiosity. They asked questions about how she had prepared, how she had stayed calm, and how it felt to play in front of so many people. She answered them softly, honestly, feeling a quiet pride in her accomplishment. She had always been quiet and reserved, but now she felt seen in a way she never had before. Her confidence had grown, not because of praise alone, but because she had faced her fear and succeeded. Throughout the day, she thought back to the moments on stage, the trembling at the beginning, the laughter of the crowd, the turning point when the audience began to listen and appreciate her skill. She remembered the little boy in the front row, the woman with tears in her eyes, and the older man who had nodded in approval. Those faces, those reactions, had become part of her story, reminders of what courage and determination could achieve. She felt gratitude for the opportunity, for the experience, and for the lesson that fear could be transformed into strength. After school, she returned to the piano, drawn to it instinctively. Sitting down, she let her fingers glide over the keys, practicing not out of fear or obligation, but out of love and passion. The music filled the room, soothing her mind and heart. She played for herself now, feeling the joy of expression without the pressure of an audience. Each note reminded her of the triumph she had experienced and the power of believing in herself. She realized that the piano was not just an instrument. It was a companion, a friend, and a source of courage. Her parents watched from the doorway, smiling silently. They understood that this moment was different from the others. The previous day had been extraordinary, but today she was discovering the lasting impact of that triumph. She was learning that courage and talent were not only about recognition but about self-discovery, growth, and the quiet joy of pursuing one's passion. The piano had become a bridge between her inner world and the world around her, a way to express herself fully and honestly. In the following weeks, the experience continued to shape her life. She noticed a subtle shift in the way she approached challenges, big and small. Tasks that had once seemed intimidating were now opportunities to test her courage. She approached schoolwork, social situations, and personal goals with a quiet determination, remembering the strength she had found on stage. The lesson of perseverance and self-belief became a guiding principle, one she carried into every new experience. she also discovered the joy of inspiring others. Friends and classmates who had once doubted themselves came to her for advice, curious about how she managed to perform despite fear. She shared her experiences gently, encouraging them to find their own courage. It was a rewarding feeling, knowing that her journey could serve as an example and motivate others. She understood that talent and courage could create ripples, influencing people beyond what she could see in a single performance. Her confidence continued to grow, but it was balanced with humility. She knew that there would always be new challenges, new fears to face, and new skills to master. She embraced this understanding, realizing that life was a continuous journey of growth. The applause, the recognition, and the joy of her performance were milestones, not endpoints. Each step forward was built on the lessons of courage, dedication, and self-belief that she had learned during that transformative experience. The piano became a daily companion, a space for reflection and creativity. She experimented with new melodies, explored different emotions through music, and allowed herself to be vulnerable in ways she had never imagined. Her music evolved, becoming richer and more expressive, reflecting the depth of her experiences and emotions. She discovered that her talent was not only a gift but also a responsibility, to nurture it, to share it, and to let it grow in ways that could inspire and connect with others. One evening, as she played a quiet piece alone in her room, she thought about the future. She dreamed of performing on larger stages, of reaching more people with her music, and of continuing to challenge herself. But she also understood that each performance, no matter the size, was meaningful. It was not just about applause or recognition, but about the courage to step forward, the dedication to practice, and the joy of expressing oneself fully. The experience had taught her that success was not measured only by external validation but by personal growth, resilience, and the impact one could have on others. Her parents continued to support her quietly, providing encouragement and understanding. They celebrated her achievements without pressure, allowing her to explore her talent at her own pace. Their belief in her, combined with her own determination, created a foundation that was both strong and nurturing. She realized that support, encouragement, and love were essential parts of any journey, helping to transform fear into courage and talent into mastery. As the months passed, she continued to participate in events, small and large, always carrying with her the lessons of that first transformative performance. Each experience reinforced her confidence, honed her skill, and deepened her understanding of the power of courage and self-expression. She learned that challenges were opportunities, that fear could be a guide rather than a barrier, and that her music could touch hearts in ways that words could not. The journey was ongoing, filled with both struggle and triumph, but she faced it with determination and joy. Looking back, she understood that the day when the crowd had laughed at first, and then been captivated by her music was more than a performance. It was a turning point in her life. It had shown her that courage, dedication, and self-belief could overcome doubt and fear. It had given her a sense of purpose and direction, inspiring her to continue exploring her talent and sharing it with the world. She had discovered her inner strength and the power of connection through music, lessons that would stay with her forever. As she lay in bed at night, reflecting on the journey, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. For her family, for the opportunity to perform, for the audience who had seen her talent, and for her own perseverance. She realized that true growth comes from facing challenges, embracing fear, and allowing oneself to shine despite uncertainty. She closed her eyes with a smile, knowing that her journey was just beginning, filled with endless possibilities, courage, and the power of music to touch hearts and change lives.